All right. Thank you to everyone who's joined Wizeline today for this webinar. We're so pleased to see so many of you here today. We're going to go ahead and get this show on the road. We've got a lot of content to share with you today and some really great panelists to introduce you to. So thank you to everyone for being here today. As a reminder, this session is recorded. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them towards the end, and otherwise we'll follow up with you once this is all over. So a quick overview of where we're going today. So in just a moment, I'm going to pass this over to our host of the evening or of the morning, and then we'll go through the introduction of our panel. Then we're going to do a really interesting rapid fire Q&A. And then we're going to have two presentations from our co-hosts today, AWS and ARC Publishing. And then if we have time at the end, we'll open it up to questions. So now I'm going to pass over the mic to our host, Chris.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm Chris Coghlan from Wizeline, a global software design and development services company. We partner with clients to build exceptional end-to-end digital products. Thank you for joining me today as we discuss the future of broadcasting. We are living through an unprecedented period of time and just now starting to identify trends in the behaviors of consumers that have shifted due to COVID-19. How technology providers in the media and entertainment industry react to those trends will have significant impacts on how news is produced, delivered, and consumed. We're lucky today to hear from two companies, both close partners of Wizeline, that are at the forefront of technology enablement in the media and news industry. First, from AWS, I'm joined by Zach Wilner, Senior Partner Solutions Architect for Media Entertainment. Welcome, Zach. Also joining us are Matt Monahan, Vice President of Product, and Aeneas Felt, Senior Product Manager from ARC Publishing. Thank you both for joining us as well. So we'll get started today with a few questions about trends in today's media and broadcasting environment. A recent article from Forbes states that since COVID-19 struck in the United States, internet usage has increased by 70%. Just in the last weeks, we've also added millions of school-aged children who are now participating in live video sessions throughout their school day, users who normally would be sitting in a classroom, not online. Zach, I'll start with you. What impacts on live streaming has AWS seen due to these shifts in behaviors?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think that we've seen a dramatic increase in customers asking about remote workflows and remote production. Previously something that was considered, but maybe not the norm, or maybe it was only used for specific events. But as they say, necessity is the mother of all invention, and we need to evolve right now. So we're seeing remote live switching, remote production, contribution for newsrooms. That's the new normal. I doubt that we'll see broadcasters going back to the way that they've done it historically, even when this whole pandemic is over. It's quite interesting to see some organizations that were previously cloud aligned seem to be positioned better to deal with this pandemic situation and working remote, because they're able to quickly scale up resources, reposition items as needed. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that.
Great, thanks, Zach. Same question to Matt and Anais. Has the increase in internet usage had an impact on our clients and consumers?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, for sure it has. I'm sure everyone's kind of familiar with like the broad industry trends that they've seen. Over the past year, in addition to just internet usage, live video specifically is up about 100% year over year from the end of Q2 to Q2 in 2019. And even like if you look month over month, March to April, the shift was dramatic. It's a 45% increase month over month, once you kind of normalize for past years. And so I think the industry trends are definitely there. And with live video specifically, it's true. Obviously from ARC, we're pretty well positioned to actually see how this impacts customers directly. We're running not only their websites, but also their live video experiences. And we saw the same type of increase on their properties. To give you some example for our customers that were already running live video on top of our platform before the pandemic began, we saw an increase of more than 3x of live video views for them in that same period. So I think, it's definitely true that for consumers, they're now much more accustomed to, consuming information on the internet, to consuming live video on the internet, potentially for events that they weren't in the past. And, just to echo what Zach said, what we heard from our customers is for those of them that were already utilizing cloud technologies such as ours and had a lot of their workflows already in the cloud, it was a much more seamless transition than for, say, prospective clients of ours that we're talking to simultaneously, that expressed a lot of frustration with how they were doing things now, and they weren't prepared for this transition.
That's great. Thank you very much for the insights there, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I want to shift topics a little bit. And again, I'll start with with Zach. With broadcasters and other media companies doing significantly more of their work remotely, how will 5G shape broadcasting over the rest of 2020 and then into 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, 5G adoption in 2020 might not be there yet. That's something that we need to start thinking about it for sure, but widespread 5G adoption isn't there yet. And I think what's going to help drive that is, really these interactive experiences that broadcasters need to be building. I'm envisioning going into a stadium when that's possible again, and being able to watch multiple feeds live, control my own replays, get stats on my phone. So I'm not sitting in the cheap seats. I'm sitting in any seat that I want and getting the feel of the stadium. Those type of experiences I feel like broadcasters will be expected to deliver. And when those start being available, the avalanche of 5G adoption will follow. So, people don't want to be left out in the dust, when it comes to technology. So I think that's going to be, one potential, big adoption point.
Great. Matt and Anaïs, anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Zach said is totally right. Like I always, I've kind of gotten that question before about what's the kind of near-term impact of 5G going to be. And, of course you have to kind of temper your expectations a little bit just based on adoption of handsets, how deeply penetrated markets are by the actual technology and getting the cell units installed. But we'll get there bit by bit. And I think once we do, what it's going to do is unlock a lot of these use cases that I think some of the more forward-thinking organizations have already started to ideate and play around with. But maybe what's holding them back is just literally access to that bandwidth in different locations, or, to Zach's use case, where you have a mass of people all in one place, that are trying to access tons of live video at the same time. But I do think, it's not totally just an abstract idea. I think you'll see the trends that we just talked about, greater proclivity for organizations to use live video to reach their customers or their audiences. You'll see that kind of merge in with the availability of bandwidth through 5G. And some of these use cases are really going to start to be unlocked. And later today, we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing on the ARC side. We've got a great customer example that's doing almost exactly what Zach is referring to, where you kind of have an audience choosing the experience that they want to see as told from multiple different vantage points using live video. And I think that'll become much, much, much more common.
Great. Thank you so much. So I think I'd like to turn it over to Zach so we can learn a little more about what AWS is doing in the cloud broadcast transformation space. So Zach, I'll turn it over to you and let you take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we're going to talk about some industry trends and some new features and services that AWS has launched to help with the situation that we're in right now. The 2020 impact on video we talked about a little bit, but looking at the report that Brightcove puts out, we've seen a huge jump in connected TV viewing, in news viewing. It is also an election year, so we somewhat expect to see that that news viewing increase. But with everything going on in the world, seeing that massive jump in connected TV viewing is really a sign of where the future is going. So I just wanted to talk a bit about what we're hearing from our customers. At AWS, we try and be extremely customer obsessed and customer focused. And these are the things that we're hearing from our customers. They want to be able to spin up on-demand niche channels. They want to get rid of satellites, which has been a trend for the last 20-something years. because satellite broadcasting is pretty expensive. The interactive, fan engagement, we're seeing all sorts of customers ask about how they can engage with their fans now that they're not doing in-person events. So that type of thing, we're just seeing a massive amount of requests for interactive and better engagement in this remote world that we're living in. And then obviously, some of the other items like consolidating facilities and cost optimization is always on the table. So here are some other challenges in the way that we're adopting them. Being able to rapidly adapt to viewer challenges is massive, and that's where AWS can help. The days of building a multi-million-dollar broadcast facility, I think, are numbered. They might not be over yet, but I would say they're on the decline. And this is maybe the final nail in the coffin for building these, massive broadcast facilities. When you have the flexibility of being able to build a, a highly available, highly redundant architecture in AWS and have it be accessible from anywhere, it doesn't necessarily make sense to pour money into, some of these type of facilities. So yeah, some of this disruption really means that we need to help our customers deliver a ton of scale, a ton of content. That Forbes article mentioned, a 70% increase in internet traffic. A ton of that is coming from AWS. And that's where we're really here to help our customers deliver these unique experiences through OTT or traditional broadcast that's originated in the cloud. So when we're asked how we approach the media industry, we're really there in the whole life cycle, from the live production element, which we're talking about a lot today, content creation, supply chain, distribution, all the way through data science. And then obviously feeding that back into your content creation to create this kind of full circle, this full circle closed loop, getting feedback type of environment. And we're seeing the line between the creators and distributors disappear, like Disney going to direct to consumer, or companies like Comcast and AT&T getting into content by buying NBC and Time Warner. So we're seeing that type of disruption where the lines between distributors and creators are hugely disrupted. Right now, I think as of August, we have over 1,600 channels of linear live broadcasting originated in AWS. So here are some AWS Media Solutions that we have that are kind of what I like to call the HelloFresh of the solutions, where we're not just giving you the recipe to build, we're giving you all of the ingredients, they're portioned out, and you have exactly what you need to do to deliver these in kind of a building block formula. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see that we have these solutions that range from content creation, editing in the cloud, these machine learning enhanced solutions that provide enhanced metadata, which we're seeing as, again, that's the new normal, to have automatic subtitling, enhanced metadata, all of those personalization recommendations. We're going to see that as a new normal going forward. So there's some solutions that are completely pre-baked, and you can go check them out at aws.amazon.com/media/solutions. So one of the other things that we briefly talked about was live production, and how really, what's the technical driver behind live production? What are the challenges that we're facing here in this remote world that we're in today? So when you're in the field, I feel like the #1 challenge is reliable connectivity. And that is not necessarily a new challenge, but we don't have the ability to have your local broadcaster go into the station to use their fast connection. So remote contribution in both file and live streams is really the big challenge that I see. There's some other challenges here, cost, underutilization, those type of things, where, if I buy an encoder, it has to sit idle, and I only need that one channel of that encoder for 30 minutes a month, 30 minutes a week, something like that, where you're not really getting the full utilization out of your equipment. So these are kind of some of the problems that we see with the live production. And what we've done to try and alleviate some of them is introduce the AWS Elemental Link. The Link is a new device that connects live video sources into AWS Elemental Media Live. It's a super small device. It weighs like a pound. It draws very low power. It actually can be powered over Ethernet. And it's totally silent, and it's $9.95. Can we go to the next slide, please? So that's a picture of the little device that we just came out with a few months ago. And like I was saying, it's super small, it's affordable, and most importantly, it's resilient. Next slide, please. So it's super easy to set up because it's fully configured. This is something that you buy through the AWS Management Console. Just a few clicks, it shows up. You plug in network cable, you plug in HDMI or HDSDI, and in a minute, you're sending reliable video, 1080p up to AWS into Media Live, where you can transcode it, process it, distribute it, all of those things that the Media Live services can do. So it's really fantastic for that. And then the thing that I think makes it valuable for the remote production world that we're in today is that it can variably adjust the bit rate, and it also has forward error correction. So if your kids all hop on and they're doing this remote learning, this e-learning, and they're all streaming stuff from Blackboard or some other e-learning type company, the bit rate will adjust automatically, and you won't have that spotty dropping video and audio connection where you look and sound like a robot. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it's super easy to operate, and it's very cost efficient. Like I said, it's $9.95 once, and it's completely pre-configured from the AWS console, literally plug and play, and anyone that has access to that console can manage the device. Next slide, please. So this is kind of what we see as a traditional live event workflow or sports broadcast event, where you have a lot of camera people, a lot of equipment on site. You have a huge production truck. You fly out crew from all around the country or world. You mix that locally. You send it back in to some remote control room. Goes through more processing, more master control, and then finally back out to OTT, satellite, over the air. So I think that, yeah, you can go to the next slide. I think that this is really kind of the antiquated or yesterday's workflow. And because of the predicament that we're in right now, we're seeing a huge adoption of where AWS can map to these elements. So I talked about the AWS Elemental Link Encoder. Potentially that sits on the end customer or the event site. You can have totally virtualized production in the cloud, and virtualized studios, virtual NRCSs, play out digital asset management, distribution, and require nothing on premise other than a relatively affordable small video encoder device, and the rest of it can be scaled up and down as needed. So you're really paying for you're paying for those resources when they're on, and you're not paying for them when they're off. If you imagine that broadcast truck, that OB truck sitting there, potentially millions of dollars, and you're using it for 3 hours once a month, but you still pay for it the whole time, and you have that massive CapEx that you need to put into it. So this is really where I think AWS can help. And this is where the future of broadcasting is going, with or without this situation that we're in. So the rainy production is kind of what I was talking about previously, where at the event site, you'll have the camera ops, you'll have audio potentially, and a few engineering resources, but you don't need to fly out the rest of the crew, the directors, the technical directors. You don't need to bring the truck. You don't need to have the 20 replay operators, sitting there. All of that can be running in the cloud, and you have a very minimal and safe footprint at the event site. And then from the cloud, you can either go direct to OTT distribution, or you can use some of our partners to connect back to traditional OTA broadcasting for like terrestrial ATSC or satellite uplinks. So really, I see that this is the future of broadcasting, and we are in it and happy to help. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email's there. And thank you so much for your time.
Zach, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It was great content, and we appreciate the insights there. Now I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Aws, who are going to take us through some of the things that ARC Publishing is doing to better connect their clients and their consumers. So Matt and Aws, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. So I think we're going to spend most of this time probably just talking about video and some of the work that we've done there, kind of aligning with the trends that we talked about earlier, but just a little bit of context about what ARC is. So first of all, ARC started out, I think, mostly focused as a CMS, but really what we are is a digital experience platform. And if you go to the next slide, I can explain a little bit about what that means. First, I mentioned earlier that we're kind of uniquely positioned to see the impact of people working from home, of the pandemic, and then just generally the shift to more remote working or remote consumption of media. We're right at the kind of front line of that. And it looks like this. It's basically 1.5 billion unique monthly visitors coming to properties that are run by ARC. And behind each of those 1.5 billion visitors, are customers of ours that have shifted from a model where maybe they were running a lot of that infrastructure in a really traditional way to one where they're utilizing a SaaS platform, which is what we are, to be able to kind of achieve that scale and obviously that growth and scale that comes with times like these. That 1.5 breaks down to something like 1,200 sites across 22 countries across the globe. And our team's about 250 people doing this. So we've got a tight core group that's helping a ton of large customers around the world achieve this type of scale. And then on the commerce side, there's obviously quite a bit of scale there too from users who are selling on top of our platform. If you go to the next slide. And so what ARC is, before we kind of just zoom in on video, it's a digital experience platform, and it runs the gamut from content creation, the tools that you need to create written content, video content, rich photo assets, and manage kind of the workflow around the creation of that content, to commerce. We've got a lot of the capabilities that media and enterprise organizations need today to sell their products online, to sell digital subscriptions to media and other content. And then finally, to deliver that content and those commerce experiences out to their users across multiple channels. And I think, individually, obviously, there's plenty of companies that play in these space, but I think it's one of the things that kind of makes us unique is that we offer a completely integrated experience with each of these three parts: content creation, commerce, and experiences. And if you go to the next slide, you can see kind of what that looks like. The tools, like I explained, that we have for photo and video, written content, content planning, the commerce part of the experience, and then finally delivering these to our users across the web, across mobile, OTT, and syndicated partners. And I think it's that integrated experience that makes us kind of unique. And so you'll see when I get to the end of this, I'll show some of our customer examples of what they've done specifically with our video platform. And I think, our position in kind of being able to deliver solutions for all three of these areas is what made it so easy for them to do something that's actually pretty unique. If you can go to the next slide. And part of the way that we've been able to do this is we're a true SaaS provider, software as a service. We're looking at basically the exact same trends that the folks at AWS are, that Zach talked about. We're seeing companies struggling with managing legacy infrastructure and the spend and the capital associated with it. with the people that you need to maintain all that infrastructure, and having to consistently upgrade it, maintain it, and all the time and the effort that they're spending on doing that, they're not focusing on their audiences. And so the companies that haven't made the shift to the cloud yet, they're the ones that are going to struggle the most. When times like this happen and everybody's at home, all of a sudden, all the lift that goes into maintaining that infrastructure just gets that much harder, and they're not well positioned to take advantage of, really audiences that are demanding content, demanding commerce experiences online right now. So what we've done is we've partnered with other, you can go back to that last slide still. We've partnered with, other kind of companies that I think have that same mindset to deliver great experiences for our users. And so with AWS, you'll see when we get to video, it's amazing how easy it is for us to make turnkey video and live video experiences for our customers by leveraging things like AWS Media Services to do it. And so I think together, this is just a really good demonstration of how software as a service makes it possible for our customers to move really quickly to deliver great experiences for their audiences. And so if we go to the next slide now, and so, I think if you put all these pieces together, Anais is a senior product manager who focuses primarily on video and mobile applications. And we'll talk a little bit about one of the specific areas that we've tried to respond to some of the trends that we've seen. We saw the move to online media consumption, live video consumption. And of course, one of the biggest benefits of software as a service is customers are always getting updates from us and new features and new products. And I think the broadcast app that Anais worked on is just a great example of that. So Anais, take it away.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen a lot of our clients take advantage of live and video content, not only over the last 3 months. Like Matt mentioned, we saw a huge jump in the creation of live videos and video content on websites across our clients, but also over the last year. So prior to even this big spike we've been building broadcasts, and it's available in the Apple Store now for our clients to use and distribute across their organization, meaning that effectively all of their employees have a control room in their pocket. Like Zach mentioned earlier in his AWS presentation, the previous and traditional workflow for broadcasting is really complex. I think I counted like 20 some steps in his deck. And that's what we found too. As a product manager, I met with a lot of our broadcasters, our publishers, and then also our enterprise clients to understand what their workflow with broadcasting is. And a lot of our clients found the cost to be way too expensive to make sense. Often they're wanting to go live during specific events. If it's, breaking news or a press conference or a sports game like Zach mentioned, and it's just too expensive to maintain all of that software, equipment, and specialized resourcing to make that possible. And so broadcast is really, truly just bringing that into your pocket in an app. And so that's what we've been focused on, and we've seen a lot of great success with our clients producing content really quickly, and we're excited to see this continue to meet that industry trend of more live streaming and video content. If you go to the next slide, we also wanted to address some of the core pain points we heard from those conversations, including ownership of the content. One of the things we heard over and over again is our clients didn't want to have all of the production and ownership on these social platforms. Their users were going to Facebook Live, for example, or YouTube because it was really easy and simple to go live, and broadcast addresses that as well. We built a wonderful, just very simple experience where you can just open your iPhone, go to the App Store, download the app, and then you're good to go. I think it's 10 clicks total, and you're going live and taking advantage of all of those wonderful AWS Elemental tools that Zach talked about. So similar to the arena where he showed you, the different cameras live streaming the sports game, an additional way of doing that now is with your iPhone, we found that the quality of the stream that broadcast creates is equivalent to traditional broadcasting methods. And many of our clients are using it right now as they're working from home. Some of our broadcasters didn't have access to their studios. I think the comment Zach made about how that traditional studio setup is, the days of that are numbered, I think that is 100% accurate. That's definitely what we heard when we were looking to basically solve the pain point of I'd like to go live from anywhere, or I'd like to create content from my phone. A lot of us take apps like Slack, for example, or Microsoft Outlook for granted, because we can just do our workflow from our phone anywhere we're at. But for broadcasting, that wasn't the case. And broadcast is really solving that pain point, and it's kind of a first of its kind application because of that. It solves being able to go live from wherever you're at, or upload video, or create that content. It's really inexpensive to use because we have an on-demand model, meaning you only pay for what you're using. If you have a marketing calendar, for example, and you'd like to go live, or produce a specific event, or record a sports game like Zach mentioned, you can do that and only pay for what you're using. And then in addition to that, you can go live from your iPhone, and it cuts out all of the complicated processes and equipment that you would traditionally need. And then you get to own the content. So instead of going directly to one of these platforms and live streaming, it's connected and fully integrated into the content management system, ARC, that Matt was talking about. So if you go to the next slide, I can show you kind of what that looks like end to end. Right on the left there, you'll see the user is streaming the SpaceX launch with the broadcast app, and then it streams into our CMS. Video Center really will help you make it's a wonderful high quality stream using AWS Elemental, but then using Video Center, you can really make sure you have that professional quality. And similar to Google Docs, where like you can have multiple people working on something at the same time, we made that possible so that someone in the field can be streaming with their phone, and then someone back in the office or in our new world at home working on their desktop, adding graphic overlays, such as a lower third where you may be typing in like about to lift off, or having some branding on there, responding to comments, things like that. You can basically have that working relationship for an event like the SpaceX launch. And then with a click of a button, you can send the stream to Facebook Live, YouTube, and all your websites and mobile applications. I think that, over the last couple of months, with this being in general availability, we've seen some really great examples of using broadcast to go live. And Matt's going to speak with you a little bit about some of those examples.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Anais. Yeah, so the use cases that we've seen are pretty interesting. And I think the SpaceX one's kind of cool because, it bridges the gap a little bit between some of the news use cases that we see, but also, some of the examples that we see some of our kind of enterprise and corporate customers doing with live video. This also, I think, kind of bridges the gap between the initial part of our discussion where we talked about the trends that we see in live video and the way that this whole pandemic has kind of accelerated some of the move towards kind of digital native content and people consuming it from home on OTT and mobile devices. And so, what you see here is basically a broadcaster who was able to deploy, using the broadcast app, multiple live streams simultaneously of the SpaceX launch, and then later the splashdown that probably a lot of folks saw when it came back down to Earth. And, unlike, and maybe you could just play it again, it doesn't go as long as I'm going to talk here probably. But, what they did was they kind of deviated a little bit from the traditional live linear setup. Where on TV, you're used to an anchor discussion, you go to one person on the field with the expansive camera truck, and then back to the anchor again. Here, what they've done is they've made an experience that's truly digital native, where the user or the audience can actually decide exactly what they want to see. And something like this is only possible to deploy first on digital channels, right? So they did this obviously on the web, but also OTT devices. And it's also only possible if you can deploy the infrastructure needed to produce these multiple live channels simultaneously. And so here, this is just such a great example of the combination of AWS Media Services, and then obviously our publishing system and the broadcast app to produce just a really cool experience with multiple different vantage points and put it all together into a really great user experience. And so finally, I think, when you start seeing things like adoption of 5G technology, greater proliferation of SaaS technologies inside large enterprises, really kind of interesting and differentiated user experiences like these are going to become more common. And for us at ARC, that's kind of the most exciting part of what we get to do for our customers. So let me take a break there. Chris, turn it back to you.
Wonderful. Thanks for taking us through kind of where ARC is going with your clients. I think that was some really good insights on use cases and how it's it's shifting in the in the immediate time we're living through. So I think Caroline is going to open up the Q&A capability. So if anybody has questions, they are now open. So feel free to ask. And I'll be going through and picking some of those out that might be applicable to our panelists. And while we're waiting for those to populate, I'm going to start with one. And I'm going to talk a little bit about creativity specifically. So video, and even more specifically live video, are incredibly engaging mediums. Beyond the traditional newsroom broadcast, how else can potential clients leverage video in a more direct consumer and hopefully different way? So Matt, maybe I'll send this over to you to start.
Yeah, that one's great, because I think probably, for broadcasters, obviously, I think they were kind of imagining what the future in like pure digital media looks like. For large enterprises, I don't know that without this pandemic and without this kind of immediate shift, they would have accelerated that trend quite as much as they did. And so what we're seeing on our platform is, an acceleration of our corporate customers using live video for things like large company meetings, company trainings, sort of company culture events where they're trying to kind of spread an internal comms message out to their many employees. And so, we've got several large corporate customers with more than 50,000 employees, and they're trying to reach that audience that now is all over the world, not in an office, all working from home. And live video is just such a great way to do it. I don't think most of those corporate customers were well positioned in the past to do something like this. Most of them probably would have worked with an agency or something like that. It would have been like a giant multi-month long project. And so they've had to very quickly accelerate their ability to deploy something like that. And I think SaaS technologies like ours, platform as a service technologies like AWS are making it possible. You look at like the basically live stream in a box device link that, Media Services is coming out with. Is perfectly targeted to customers like that who don't have a studio but need to run live video.
Zach, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's another fantastic use case that we're seeing where this interactive live video shopping experience is kind of something that is relatively new. I don't know if it's driven by the current world situation or not, but Amazon has a live stream of actually products, and they do these interactive kind of shopping experiences. And we're seeing other retailers use a new service that we came out with a few months ago called IVS, Interactive Video Service, which provides super low latency, like 2 to 6 seconds from glass to glass with worldwide distribution. And it also provides the ability to have like a sidecar metadata where you can have an embedded chat, or you can have polling built into your video stream and do these timed, responses. So I think that the interactive shopping thing is something that's relatively new, and we'll see more of it. Like Matt was talking about, the corporate broadcasting use case is huge, and we've obviously seen a massive jump in that. But there's a lot of other creative use cases. I've watched lots of concerts streamed online recently on Twitch or YouTube. And I think that those we're going to continue to see, and they're going to get more and more creative and interactive about, what content they're able to bring in and how they're remotely collaborating with artists all around the world. That's something that was driven by the pandemic, but it's turning out that it's very interesting and really compelling. So I think we'll see it in the future as well.
Great, thanks, Zach. A couple of questions popping up in the Q&A. Again, if you have additional questions, please go ahead and drop them in there, and we'll try to get those answered by the panelists. So this one is for ARC, so either for Matt or Anais. Is there a limit on how many concurrent broadcast live streams can be handled on a single account?
You want to take that one in here? So you want me to grab it?
Sure. I don't think we have a specified limit in our documentation because it's something like 500. I think it depends on how many channels, depends on the model. So for broadcast, the app specifically, we have an on-demand model. So we basically have tons of channels available to users to pull from. So basically you go live and something's available and you can have hundreds of streams going at a time.
Yeah, I think if you look at the the examples that some of our customers have done where they're employing like multiple simultaneous live streams, some of the folks, the one broadcaster we showed with the SpaceX launch, I think they probably had about 10 of those deployed simultaneously. We have a large publisher in Argentina that did one where they did like 4 simultaneous live streams and kind of put it together into a composite. So if the question is, can you do multiple live streams simultaneously? Yeah, it's great for that, right? And once again, I think this is where we're not provisioning actual hardware because of the combination of how we run it and how AWS runs it. It's really easy for us to scale up for broadcasters, for enterprises who are trying to create video experiences that are multiple different streams at the same time.
Thanks, guys. It's sort of on the same trend here when talking about video. So there's a question, I think we focused a lot on the enterprise to start. Let's say you're, a small local town, you've got a high school football team that has, an interest in broadcasting games or things like that. What's the best way for, a smaller client to get started? That maybe doesn't have the physical assets or the newsroom capabilities that a larger enterprise might have.
I think that's one of our primary use cases for broadcast. We ran a beta with a broadcaster we work with who owns multiple local news stations. And our first test in production of the app was streaming the 4th of July fireworks last year. And we used a station in Orlando, which is obviously a city, but since then we've rolled out the app across many newsrooms in more local, smaller towns. And I think because it's so easy to use and it's accessible in the App Store, it's just like going in and downloading really any app you would use on your phone. And then also because it's an on-demand model, meaning if it's just the football game you're mentioning, you could just go live for just that football game and that's all you're paying for. And the distributed systems that Zach, showed us with AWS Elemental, that really, to a certain degree, democratizes this ability to go live. And I think that really is the future of broadcasting, is that more organizations can go live. The cost impediment is reduced. The technology is super simple with something like broadcast, and you could capture local news content. I think it's kind of augmented our newsroom, even though we have a really big newsroom with lots of specialized equipment. This is kind of a different use case where anyone in our newsroom can go live.
So I think, the interesting thing is the example of, say, like a small local broadcast station and maybe an enterprise have like more in common than you think, because what's similar between them is you have organizations that don't necessarily have the resources or a lot of deep background in provisioning new infrastructure to spin up for these types of cases. So I think that's really what's new here, and what's different is that, for organizations that, maybe they've only provisioned it in the past and it's kind of there and no one's touched it for a while, they have one broadcast engineer, or for, large enterprises, but just don't have any live video capabilities whatsoever. All of a sudden there's this technology and the software as a service that's available for them to do so really, really easily with kind of limited expertise.
That's great, thanks. And I know that we focused a lot on video today, and the ARC team, I know that you have tons of tools available for traditional print publishers, but are there any specific use cases that you've seen that have been highlighted either because of shifts in consumer behaviors over the last 5 or 6 months that ARC addresses really well, or anything that you would want to highlight here just quickly on the print publishing side?
Well, I mean, I think, for print publishers, the challenge is a lot like large traditional broadcasters, where, you've got a model for content and media production that's aligned to a medium that, is declining. And so, I think our message has always been, whether for broadcast enterprises, traditional publishers, we're trying to shift to digital first media that consumers are really looking for, and typically on, devices that are becoming more common, like mobile devices, like connected TVs. So, there, I think the mix that we have of content, commerce, experiences, they're all geared towards digital production, obviously, first. And I think that print publishers are going to have to make the same adaptations that the broadcasters are having to make, where it's, just like it's not going to be all about live linear, or even mostly about live linear at some point. It's not really all about print newspaper anymore. That just winds up being one kind of minor channel that over time is going to become, less dominant as consumers, like they already have, started adopting digital first media, digital first technologies.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, the Washington Post has been doing a lot of live content in the last 3 months, and we obviously still have a print newspaper. And I think, part of that is just meeting the need of the time. Working from home and working with distributed teams has changed everything. User behavior has changed and reader behavior has changed. I think folks are looking for live content to engage with across multiple platforms. And that's one of the things we made sure was part of our feature set in broadcast, is that from your iPhone, you could go live not only to Facebook, but your website, your mobile app, Facebook, YouTube, Apple News, and it's just with one click of a button. So I think if anything, for print newspapers, using something as easy as broadcast can only enhance your following and your engagement.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we've kind of hit most of the questions that are in the Q&A panel. If participants do have questions that you want answered, please go ahead and put those back in there. But I did want to kind of turn it back over to our panelists for any kind of closing remarks. Zach, I'll start with you. Any parting words of wisdom, either to broadcasters or newsrooms, about what they need to be doing or should be thinking about in the changing world we're living in?
Yeah, I think that we really should be open about workflow change and work change. Like, everyone needs to be very flexible, and sometimes change can be a little scary, but we're seeing so many good things come out of, to look at the glass half full, we're seeing a lot of good change come out of this in the way that we produce news, we create content, we distribute news. And so I just wanted to, say that to all the participants. Don't be afraid to look at a different option, look at something from a different angle, and question what's possible with, AWS, with our partners like Arc, or, maybe you have a crazy pie in the sky idea and you want to experiment. And this is the perfect time to do that, to figure out what the future looks like. So, I just wanted to close on that, where, don't be afraid to explore and be curious.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think this time probably demands more creativity when it comes to content creation than ever before. And I think that's equally true for organizations that are kind of new to being primarily content creators, like large enterprises where their primary business is something else. It's as true for them as it is for broadcasters and publishers who, might have kind of a very fixed and rigid idea of what it means to create content and what their channels are like and how their audiences consume content. And now they have to shift quickly. And, for maybe the first time, now all of a sudden the technology to deploy new experiments and new types of content is cheaper and more accessible than ever. And I think that's what we prove and what AWS proves. And so the kind of missing link that needs to happen is those organizations need to be willing to kind of take chances and adapt, try new content formats, try experimenting with new channels that they haven't participated in before. Hopefully we can help our audiences do that, and hopefully we can help them think creatively about, new types of content to create.
I think that the future of broadcasting is for everyone, and partnerships like AWS and Arc, the tools that we're building are really what will make that possible.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for your time. I think it's been really, really insightful. I think that what you guys are all doing in the technology space is incredible, and consumers and technology companies alike are benefiting from the capabilities you're putting in their hands. So we appreciate all the work. We appreciate the partnership with both ARC and with AWS. And just to follow up with what Zach was saying, if you're in the mood to start experimenting or building something new, Wizeline would love to hear from you and see if there's a way we can help you accelerate that innovation. And we'd love to be able to do it with our partners at ARC and AWS. So I think that we're going to wrap a couple of minutes early. But thank you both, or all of you, for the great insights and for joining us today for all the panelists. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.